Hello everybody and welcome back to my DC Cinematic Universe fanfiction. Now, I know it's been a while since the last video. Life happens. That's all I'm gonna say. And then before we get started, I just want to say I'm no storyboard writer. My music's my thing, so when it comes to writing stories, I'm doing this purely just as a fan who just likes to read and consume all the content. So take that for what it's worth. And let's not drag this intro on any further. Let's go and jump right into Phase 2. So the first project that I have in my Phase 2 is a continuation of the Bat family of sorts. So where we leave off from the Justice League, the Bat family is consisting of Batman, Alfred, Barbara Gordon, Batgirl, and Jason Todd, Robin. Nightwing exists in this universe at this point in time, but he's off doing his own thing. And this series is going to focus mainly on Batgirl and Robin, and that is the title of this miniseries. I plan this to be about a 6 to 8 episode, one season spin-off show, because I feel like there's a lot of information in here that it wouldn't really work as a movie. So I'd rather it be a sort of mini-series, something where you can kind of see our characters at rest a bit more and see them think and throw ideas off each other and really see Batgirl and Robin, this being, of course, again, Jason Todd, really kind of come into their own. The main plot of the show will revolve around the fact that Batman has been pulled out of Gotham by the Al Ghul family, so he leaves Gotham in the hands of Batgirl and Robin. Around the same time, the Penguin and Black Mask are getting into a gang war. This also has the Riddler and Two-Face involved, as each are kind of the right hands of their respective crime boss. The reason that Batman is pulled away is more of a read between the lines thing. You know it's the Al Ghuls by certain things that'll be shown in the background. Batman in the show would only really say, like, I have to go, you have Gotham, for the week or 2 weeks he's gone. And so it's really through the environmental storytelling rather than the explicit, mentionings from Alfred or Barbara or Jason that you find out he's actually gone to meet with the Al Ghouls. And the reason he's away that is never explicitly mentioned, but fans could infer, is the existence of Damian Wayne. Now, the purpose of this show is to graduate our young sidekicks into being heroes of their own, even if they still primarily work with Bruce as their lead partner, if you will. They're still competent on their own. They could go on a patrol on their lonesome and still get the job done. Now, the next project to be released in 2018 will be Wonder Woman 1984, exactly how we got it. Of course, again, Steve Trevor is recasted as someone not named Chris Pine. And now the last movie to be released in 2018 would be my Suicide Squad movie. If you're going to take a look at David Ayer versus James Gunn's Suicide Squad, considering I wrote this script well before the James Gunn movie was released, although I do prefer the James Gunn released, this is more in the vision of David Ayer's version, or what was intended to be his version. So my team is going to be consisting of, excuse me while I read them off, Deadshot, Captain Boomerang, Rick Flag, June Moon, not Enchantress yet, Katana, and Killer Croc. And the benefit of having the movie the way I have it is we already have been introduced to Deadshot, Harley Quinn, and Captain Boomerang in their own movies, as well as having Amanda Waller and Rick Flag show up a little bit in post-credit scenes, so there has been an introduction to majority of the characters that will be in this movie, meaning that if we look back at 2016 Suicide Squad, like the first half hour, 45 minutes, it seems like, are just learning who everybody is. And then they just sprint to the climax, and the pacing just feels super, super off. With this Suicide Squad movie, this team of members will be going up against, I think, a really interesting villain that we have yet to see in live action to my knowledge, and that is Queen Bee. Now, what really kind of entices me about this idea of the Suicide Squad going against Queen Bee is the Suicide Squad is this team of dysfunctional, disorganized villains forced to work together and you have a literal hive mind of slaves forced to work together, where one is they're independent and the other one is a literal hive mind again. I just think this is a really, really fun idea and would be, I think, a great, villain choice for a team like the Suicide Squad, where you're not going to go up against someone who would be a member of the Suicide Squad. This is somebody who's just off doing their own thing. Now, the post-credit scenes for this movie would be something like Amanda Waller having those conversations with the government officials at dinner like she does in the 2016 Suicide Squad movie, where she's talking about like what if Superman went evil and why she's putting together Task Force X / the Suicide Squad. And putting that, again, that hypothetical situation, what if Superman went evil? And the second post-credit scene would be June Moon spelunking through whatever mountain range she was in and getting possessed by Enchantress, teasing a potential future villain. Now, this next project is one of my favorites in the entire universe, and that is Batman 2: Joker's Vengeance. At this point in the story, about 18 months have passed since Justice League, and we've had Batman, Batgirl, and Robin all put away criminals left and right and been a well-oiled machine since Batgirl and Robin have really graduated into becoming heroes of their own. Now, for Robin, he has really started to cross the line between confidence and started getting really cocky. And he bites off more than he can chew. He starts getting really, really violent and is just out of control. To help control Jason, or at least what he thinks is helping, Batman suspends him. Jason doesn't like this, but he has no choice. Using this time, he revisits the old street he used to live on. He starts going back into his own past and really try to figure out more about, what happened to his family before Bruce. And he eventually finds some old possessions in the old apartment he used to live in before his parents died. And he finds out that the woman who was raising him, who he thought was his mother, wasn't really his mother. He eventually tracks her down with the Batcomputer and finds out she has been a missionary for Gotham City, and goes off to try and find her. All the while, the villains have been planning something malicious. This, of course, being Joker and Harley after Joker breaks her out of prison. The plan is to get after Gordon and Batman. So what he does is he goes to the Gordon household, shoots Barbara, kidnaps them both, and takes them to Amusement Mile. Batman, who finds out what happened to the Gordon family, is trying to get a hold of Jason so that way he'd have his partner and like, you're not suspended, I need your help. But Jason's not responding. What ended up happening was Jason, of course, was also kidnapped, as Joker was able to deduce who Jason Todd was and used, admittedly, his real mother, who was really alive, and kidnapped him and beat them both to a bloody pulp. Batman, not knowing this, races off to try to save Barbara and Jim from Amusement Mile. Alfred, just to be safe and be redundant, calls someone else. And all you hear on the phone is, "I'll be there." As Batman is racing off, he starts beating the villains to a bloody pulp. He beats Joker to almost an inch of his life. And as he's in this rage, one voice pulls him out of it. And that is Nightwing. Camera pans over to him, and you just have that cliche superhero theme play, and Nightwing talks Batman down and helps save Batman from going down that path. Batman finally gets his composure, gets information that's actually relevant. Joker just now starts singing because Joker knows it's too late, and now he really has Batman where he wants him. He fully tells him what happened to Jason. He shows him a video of him beating him with a crowbar. You see the panels come into live action, and it finishes with Joker telling Batman the exact address where Jason's at, knowing full well that Batman can't reach it in time. Nightwing offers to handle the mess here at Amusement Mile as Batman races off to try to save Jason. Of course, as he's racing off, the second he shows up on the property, the building explodes and Jason's body is found lifeless in the rubble. So obviously I'm combining the Killing Joke and Death in the Family. I cannot take credit for coming up with this idea of combining these two stories. I don't know where the idea came from, but I know it didn't come from me. So take that for what you will. I do have two post-credit scenes for this movie. The first one being that we witness a grave robbing. A mysterious group of people are stealing the coffin outside of Wayne Manor, and the headstone that they're stealing from reads Jason Todd. Now, the second post-credit scene is showing a young kid, no older than about 13 years old, watching Batman and Robin highlights. This, of course, being Dick Grayson Robin from back in the day. And he notices that Dick Grayson Robin, he doesn't know it's Dick Grayson, does a quadruple somersault, a very specific move that he'd only been seen done once before when Haley's Circus came into town and he watched the Flying Graysons. Watching that happen, he notices that Dick Grayson from the Flying Graysons does the exact same move the exact same way. Using this, he pieces together because, well, the Graysons' parents were killed in a tragic accident. He was taken in by Bruce Wayne, and now Robin's doing the same moves, and this time he looks at the timeline and he figures out that Dick Grayson must be Robin, and by extension Bruce Wayne must be Batman. This, of course, is a young Tim Drake. Now, the next movie that I have in 2019 will be my Superman sequel, Metallic Terror. At this point, Metropolis has been put under fear of various murders and robberies being done by this new age of criminal. This criminal specializes in using drones and is self-dubbed Metallo. Supes is having trouble finding him as he never truly shows his face, and using drones and having the source of his voice being all over the place, it's hard to pinpoint where he actually is. Now, Clark Kent, investigative journalist, is also having trouble trying to get the lead on where this Metallo could be. Pulling ourselves out of the story a little bit to give some context, Metallo is not an Ultron-like robot yet. He's still just a normal man named John Corbin who is just a drone and electronics master. Eventually, he does find John Corbin in time for the big climactic fight where Corbin, who has been getting more and more arrogant with his crimes, eventually creates a quasi Iron Man type suit where he could walk into it and be his own drone, and then he could walk away and the drone would fly off and it'd be a perfect getaway. While at first part of his plan is working perfectly, eventually fighting Superman with him in the suit leaves it damaged to the point where when he tries to escape, the suit malfunctions and the suit effectively kills him. And Superman has to deal with the fact that his villain just flat out died and has to deal with did I kill him or did he kill himself? And that whole question of responsibility of did I kill him or did he kill himself? Again, just to be redundant. Now, in the post-credit scene, I have two hidden men who are taking the body of John Corbin, which is still stuck in the suit, and they are taking essentially what's left of his brain and consciousness, combining that with a suit that is just a robot, really. I don't know why I said suit. It's a robot that is powered by kryptonite, and they're able to actually somewhat revive him, similar to Robot Man from the Doom Patrol. And this truly does create Metallo as we know him. The next movie in my universe is Green Lantern Rage. Coming off of the win against Sinestro, Hal Jordan returns to Oa very, very confident in his abilities and is praised for his heroic efforts. All the while, Oa is now being threatened by the Red Lanterns of Rage and their leader, Atrocitus. Hal Jordan, who has now been given a bit more power and has gone up a few ranks on the totem pole, suggests that we need to take out Atrocitus before he takes us out. The Guardians of the Universe think this is a horrible idea, but Hal can't get it out of his head. Going to Kilowog and trying to reason with him to get him a small band of lanterns together so that way they can go and defeat Atrocitus, similar to Narnia Prince Caspian when the Pevensey children and Caspian get a group of heroes together to take out King Miraz. This eventually doesn't end up going well for the Lanterns. Kilowog refuses to work with Hal on this idea as he sees it as complete suicide, but Hal tries anyway, and this just falls apart. A lot of the Lanterns either die or get converted into Red Lanterns. And when he returns, the Guardians of the Universe don't like this very much and send him to Earth where he is suspended of service. During his time off from the Lantern Corps, Hal starts to rethink where he is in his life. While he's in a bar, because that's where you do these things, he ends up meeting a very lovely lady by the name of Carol Ferris. Now, while this is all happening, Oa is attacked by Atrocitus, and many of the lanterns are either killed or converted. And although a few are able to escape in time, their numbers are vastly diminished. Kilowog goes to Earth to try to find Hal, does, and him and Hal go off and round up what's left of the lanterns and are able to go defeat and kill Atrocitus. Now, for Green Lantern, I do have one post-credit scene planned for this movie, and that is picking up right when when Hal Jordan and Kilowog fly off into space for the final battle. We look back at Carol Ferris, who is standing there and has a pink aura surround her as she flies off into space in another direction. This, of course, confirming that at this point in the story, she is Star Sapphire. My second movie of 2020 is my Flash sequel, Flash 2. Iris, who is at this point Barry's girlfriend, is inviting her younger cousin Wally to learn what he can from Barry about the law enforcement industry. As Barry is showing Wally around the forensic lab, there is a villain known as Mirror Master who is around the precinct, falsifying documents, stealing items from evidence, and killing anybody who gets in his way. Barry tells Wally to get down and to, find cover as he taps into the Speed Force, trying to save everybody in the precinct. Doing this inadvertently recreates his own origin, as the lightning summoned from the Speed Force knocks Wally into a similar vat of chemicals, incapacitating Wally, and Barry only notices this after he's handled Mirror Master for the time being. Wally is then taken to a hospital where Iris, of course, is questioning the Flash's legitimacy as a hero, as this obviously happened from the Flash, not Mirror Master in her mind. And again, Iris doesn't know that Barry is the Flash in this point in the story. And the Flash is starting to really question his abilities as a hero. He's really looking at himself saying, am I really ready to be a hero? I can't even save the people close to me. By the end of the movie, Mirror Master is defeated and is locked up into Iron Heights prison. Wally, at the end of the movie, does, of course, wake up, as he is now able to tap into the Speed Force and become a speedster just like Barry. And the story ends similar to the Spider-Man video game, where Miles shows Peter that he has spider powers, and Peter shows him that he does too, and that he's actually Spider-Man. Similar story beat here, where Wally starts showing that his arm is moving faster while still in the hospital bed, and Barry proves to him that he is the Flash. I do have one post-credit scene planned for this movie. In Iron Heights prison, a shadowed figure is walking up to Mirror Master and offering him to get revenge on the Flash. Mirror Master, of course, accepts this plan. Now, the next movie I have is, pretty easy. It's Shazam, exactly how we got it, except, of course, since I'm using Mark Strong as Sinestro in my universe, I have Armin Shimmerman playing Dr. Sivana. For my post-credit scenes, one of them is exactly the same, the one we see with Mr. Mind and Dr. Sivana in the prison, whereas the second one, as opposed to being an Aquaman joke, it's going to be revealing that the 7 deadly sins are related to Trigon and, by extension, Raven. So yeah, editing Kevin here. I noticed that this post-credit scene involving the 7 deadly sins and Trigon was actually not intended for this Shazam movie. It was intended for Shazam 2. The second post-credit scene was actually supposed to be Wonder Woman come by to recruit him for the Justice League, which of course Shazam accepts. My first movie of 2021 will be Aquaman 2. Arthur Curry is proving himself a very valuable king of Atlantis, as his reputation as a hero has already been well established. However, there is still a man hell-bent on taking down the king of the 7 seas, David Kane, Black Manta. A man of extreme persistence and patience who systematically attacks Atlantis. Eventually, David Kane Black Manta does take on a cruel poetic justice in his own mind and kills Thomas Curry before Arthur can save him. When Aquaman is able to track down Manta and have his climactic battle, similar to the first movie, Queen Atlanna is able to show up and talk Arthur out of killing this villain and put him on trial in Atlantean court, where he is doomed to life in prison. Next is Justice League Crime Syndicate. We open with a montage of a news report talking about how thankful we are about having the Justice League, as they're putting away criminals, stopping supervillains, and are really there and helping us when we need it the most. Suddenly, the screen would go black and silent for just a couple seconds. When we get picture and audio back, we're having a different montage. It's that everyone's afraid. There's pandemonium in the streets, and the reporter is saying that everyone has to stay home and stay safe. The crime syndicate are on a complete and utter crime spree. After this report, we get to meet the crime syndicate. That is Ultraman, Owlman, Superwoman, Power Ring, Johnny Quick, Sea King, and Mazaz. All of these characters are in the Owl Cave, if you will, and they're upset because their world just bends the knee to them, and crime's no longer fun. Owlman has a solution for this. He reveals that their version of Lex Luthor has created a device that lets them travel between worlds and just be able to restart, actually have some resistance for once. Of course, the world they end up going to is, well, the Earth of our universe. And so the crime syndicate show up and just start relishing the fact that there is resistance now, that there's a challenge. And of course, the Justice League hear about the fact that they're now just destroying the world, and of course go to stop them, realizing that they're evil doppelgangers. Eventually, Power Ring will be kidnapped by the Justice League for interrogation, while the Flash will be taken by the crime syndicate as a prisoner. We then cut to the Justice League interrogating Power Ring as he is talking about basically telling about their entire plan of just universal and multi-universal domination. After learning what they can from Power Ring, they realize that, well, Flash is their prisoner. He's not going to be around for very long. They're not going to be really waiting too long until they can kill Flash. So they have to go and save him. When the battle happens, Power Ring is able to escape, and now Flash is still a prisoner and can't get out. So now the crime syndicate is really outnumbering the Justice League here. This is all capped off with Johnny Quick just stating that, well, the villains in this universe must freaking suck if this is the heroes that they're having to go up against. And that's when the wall bursts down, so to speak, as suddenly Deadshot, Harley, Rick Flag, all of the Suicide Squad show up and are able to turn the tide against these villains. And Harley in particular has a comment saying that, yeah, you might be bigger and more powerful, but you have no class. The movie ends with the Justice League using the same tech that brought the crime syndicate into the world and sends them to the most desolate world that you can possibly think of. I do have 2 post-credit scenes planned for this Justice League movie, one of which, of course, teasing the next big bad, Darkseid. The second post-credit scene picks up right from that ending interview between the Justice League and the news team. It ends with Superman just putting his hand on the reporter's shoulder and saying, "Thanks, John," as they all fly away. Specifically the name John, because when you see the reporter walk into his van and as he's all alone, he starts to transform into Martian Manhunter, J'onn J'onzz. Now, just like in Marvel's Phase 2, I don't end this phase with an Avengers/Justice League movie. I finish it on a hero's first solo movie. That is Nightwing. Early in the movie, we have Dick Grayson meeting Tim Drake by Tim going up to Dick while he's working and revealing, albeit privately told, that Tim knows his secret identity and Bruce's secret identity, and tries to convince Dick that he needs to go back and be Robin so that way Bruce doesn't fall into despair and just lose his mind. Dick also tries to convince him that he has been helping Bruce with what he can, but he, for himself and his own sake, can't go back to being Robin because the last years of his time working with Bruce were just completely horrible for him and he needed to move on. All while this is happening, Haley Circus makes its way back into Bloodhaven, and Dick starts to have flashbacks to what has happened to his parents, as that's the circus that he was a part of. While reconnecting with a bunch of the people who are still in the circus, Dick eventually runs into his friend, Richard. I know this is going to be a little bit confusing. I'm going to try to explain this as best I can. Richard is the Raptor, and he coincidentally happens to have the same full name as Dick Richard Grayson. Know that, albeit Dick is short for Richard and both characters are technically named Richard, know that they are two separate characters. So when I say Richard, I'm referring to the Raptor, and when I say Dick, I'm referring to Nightwing. Dick and Richard start reconnecting and talking about all these great things that have happened to them in their short time together in Haley's circus, as Richard was also a member of the circus way back when, and when his parents were killed, he joined the circus and was essentially also raised for the albeit short time by John and Mary Grayson. Although when the incident occurred, Dick was adopted by Bruce and Richard was left behind. During the time that Richard was left behind, he reveals to Dick that he has dedicated all of his free time to finding out what caused the trapeze incident, and that he has finally found out who killed John and Mary Grayson. While they're all talking, Tim starts to suspect that Richard knows more than he's really letting on, but Dick, who's of course distracted by the fact that he now knows who killed his parents, assuming Richard's telling the truth, which, I mean, they're essentially brothers, he has a hard time not trusting Richard in this scenario. And Tim, who of course is new to all this, is able to see a little clearer behind, not get caught up in, the past, and tries to convince Dick this is a mistake. Something's wrong here. But of course, Dick goes off with Richard and tries to find Zuko. Now, Dick doesn't bring Tim along because, well, number one, Tim is not trained and is a teenager. Dick Grayson knows you should never bring a kid along. That is a very dangerous thing to do. So Tim gets left behind. Eventually, of course, the Raptor and Nightwing start beating up a bunch of his goons on their way to finding him. And one of these goons is Roland Desmond, who is Blockbuster. He gets beaten up and put unconscious, and really just in this point in the story, the right-hand man, the top goon for Tony Zuko. Eventually, the two do find Zuko, as he is shockingly really pathetic, as he's about to lose a gang war and has lost majority of his power. It is at this point that, as Zuko is beaten up and put into submission by Raptor and Nightwing, Raptor tries to convince Dick to finish the job. You were the biological son of John and Mary Grayson. You are the one who needs to avenge their death. Nightwing, who of course has been trained never to kill under any circumstances, immediately objects to this. This is what sends Raptor into a frenzied state and starts questioning, wait, did you not really love your parents? Why aren't you doing this? Why wouldn't you follow through with this? And in his fit of confusion and rage, pulls out his own claws and just destroys Tony Zuko. It is at this point that Dick really finds out what Tim had been talking about, and that turns out Raptor was the competing mob boss with Zuko. It is at this point where the two have a massive climactic fight, and Dick is actually able to put the Raptor into prison and has the strength to spare his life. The post-credit scenes are, number one, Tim makes his way to Wayne Manor and offers his services as Robin, whereas number two, we see a chemist working on the body of Roland Desmond, who never died but was definitely beaten up pretty good. This is Mark Desmond, Roland's brother, who is trying to save him, and of course this creates Blockbuster. Anyway, thank you all for watching. Again, I have no idea how much time went into this. Just know it is a ton. I'm excited to see what James Gunn does. I wanted to say that and get that off my chest, as James Gunn has been brought into DC in between the last video and this video. Just really excited to see what he does. If you want to stay tuned for future Phase videos, I suggest you click that subscribe button, as I do plan to make those Phase 3 and Phase 4 videos. Hopefully a bit sooner than the time between these past two videos. And you all have a very lovely